Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for sharing part of your evening with us and joining us for this interactive discussion on high prices and low incomes, how we cope. So the goal of tonight's conversation, we really are hoping to bring together Calgarians who are living on low incomes. So that you can share your experiences of coping with the high cost of living right now. And as well, we panelists are hoping to contribute what we are hearing too. So our hope is that you will leave tonight's session with more perspective and ideas so that we can all better navigate the current environment together. I see that we have a few other not-for-profits joining us today. Thank you for joining us and welcome. So as our not-for-profit partners, I welcome you to share your organization info in the chat, and please also share just one short blurb about what you and your organization are also doing to help Calgarians who are living on low incomes and supporting them during this time. I think that would be very useful. So as a reminder, we just have a very short 45-minute discussion planned for today. So although our panelists can only provide overarching commentary and unfortunately cannot comment on specific individual cases during tonight's talk, feel free to contact us directly afterwards using the contact information that is currently shown on the screen. Alternatively, you can just email me, Liz, at lizw@momentum.org, and I'll make sure that your inquiry gets to the right place. So this is very much a two-way conversation tonight. Your comments and questions are encouraged and important to keep this discussion flowing. So you can get your comments and questions to us in two ways. One way, a lot of you have already discovered, and that is through the chat feature. And that is good if you are okay with other people seeing your name and your comment. So use the chat if you're okay with people seeing your name and your comment. But if you wish to remain anonymous and you do not want other people to see your name, you only want the panelists to see your comment or question, please type that into the Q&A and I will try to read that out on your behalf. So I'm just going to quickly check the chat and the Q&A now to make sure there is nothing in there. Okay, nothing at this time. All right, so let's start off by introducing our panelists. So we have a group of 3 not-for-profit professionals here today, and we're all on the same side as the community. Perhaps I'll start by introducing myself first. My name is Liz Wong. I am a financial empowerment facilitator here at Momentum, which is a local not-for-profit, and we aim to create a thriving local economy for everyone here in Calgary and area. We do that in a few different ways, but one way is by running free workshops on money management, as well as incentivized savings programs for people who are living on low incomes. So specifically, the program that I run is called the Momentum Savings Challenge. It is a challenge that is available on the free Cuber app, and it's kind of like an in-app rewards program if you are a saver who is living on a low income. So you can learn more at momentum.org/savings-app. And next, I would like to introduce my wonderful colleague, Jody Moffat. So Jody leads the in-person and on-demand money management delivery systems, as well as a financial literacy training initiative in Momentum's Financial Empowerment Department. So you can join Jody on Monday nights for free virtual workshops. Topics include budget, assets, credit, and consumerism. Jody is a registered social worker. She has many years of experience working with vulnerable populations, such as women and families at risk, as well as Calgarians living on low incomes, to help them reach their wellness goals. So in her spare time, Jody loves visiting the mountains. And I hear, Jody, that you're also quite the expert at cooking up a plant-based meal. Is that true?
Well, I guess it depends on who you ask, Liz, but I feel like I am. Whether my children would agree with that phrase, I'm unsure, but I do enjoy it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure they would, as would anyone who has ever had the pleasure of tasting your cooking. So thanks, Jody. And also Jody oversees Momentum's on-demand money management courses. So those are short videos about money management that you can start and stop at any time. And they are available at courses.momentum.org, again, for free. So at this point, I would love to welcome our guest panelists, Wayne Korstein. Wayne is a consumer education and engagement specialist at the Utilities Consumer Advocate, or UCA, and has over 10 years of professional communications experience in the corporate, not-for-profit, and government sectors. So in his role, Wayne meets with consumers and stakeholders to share how Alberta's unique utility system works, provide tools to help consumers make informed decisions, explain line items on utility bills, and answer consumer questions about electricity, natural gas, and water utilities in Alberta. Did I miss anything there, Wayne?
Nope, that covers everything there.
Great. Well, thank you again so much for joining us tonight. And the audience can see on the screen here that the website for UCA is ucahelps.alberta.ca. Thank you again so much, Jody and Wayne, for joining us tonight. And I'm just going to remind the audience again that your questions and comments are so important to tonight's discussion. So please start typing your questions and comments into the Q&A section. If you would like to remain anonymous, that is, if you would like to not share your name, but if you are okay with sharing your name, please feel free to put that in the chat. And again, if you are viewing as one of our not-for-profit partners, we would love to hear from you in the chat as well, just to tell us and our attendees tonight exactly what it is that you do to help support Calgarians living on low incomes. All right, so while everyone is typing their questions, I'm just going to start off with a question for our panelists. So Jody and Wayne, you probably hear from many people trying to stretch their incomes on a regular basis, trying to pay their bills. What concerns are you hearing a lot more of lately?
That's a great question, Liz. Thank you for asking. And I think it's a common one that a lot of us in nonprofits are facing currently right now. There seems to be almost an increase in folks that are living on a low fixed income. And so what I mean by that really is, government benefits, things such as AISH or Alberta Works, folks that are coming in that are living on a low income from wages. So maybe they work shift work, or they might have to work multiple jobs in order to make any sort of living. And they're really still living quite a bit below that poverty line and trying to meet ends, really. One thing that I have definitely noticed and heard a lot about in my classes and speaking with folks is the increase in things such as their utilities or even their food. There's a lot of talk about increase in things such as gas and the availability to be able to drive. Even the access to basic goods such as milk or toilet paper or things that folks might be needing for their family seems to be stretched right now, and they're really struggling to meet the basic needs within their housing.
Yeah, I totally agree, Jody. That is absolutely what I'm seeing from my participants as well. Sorry, Wayne, did you have a thought there?
Yeah, I'll just kind of tack on a little bit as well to one thing that Jody mentioned, which was the utilities has been a big thing that everybody's been seeing, and that's the space that we operate in. So we hear a lot on everything utility related, and the biggest thing we've found, especially over this winter, was very high bills. There's a few different reasons for that, which I'll touch on throughout the session. But the biggest thing people found is their bills were higher this year than in previous winters, and they continue to stay high, and they're not really sure. How do they? How do I plan my bill? How do I plan my utilities so that I'm not getting these big surprises, or what do I do if I can't pay? Those kind of things. So there's lots of stresses that come with that. And it comes to that whole situation of heat or eat. Do I pay my bill or do I pay for my groceries? Those things. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is going to be very much related to what Jody and you were going to talk about, because at the end of the day, every consumer has the same pot of money to start with, and they have to figure out where to pay it. And if the utilities take a bigger chunk, that adds a stress. So we'll talk about some different things that we can look at to help out with that and better understand this. But the biggest thing we find is people's bills have been higher than they maybe have been used to. And the other thing we often found is people don't really understand what everything on their bill means. So what is a delivery fee? What is a usage fee? Why are there so many different things on my bill? So a lot of my work is to kind of explain that so people know why our system is the way it is, and then also what the best way to keep our costs as low as possible.
That's, yeah, very interesting to hear, Wayne. And one thing that you mentioned that really resonated with me was heat or eat. That is absolutely something that I'm hearing my participants say along those lines anyway. That, yeah, it really is a matter of, should I, can I afford to buy groceries this week, this month, or, can I pay these utility bills? And I think what's interesting is that, for example, a handful of my participants have told me lately that they are really looking at the free food pantries that are available in the communities. And I mean, some of them know about these and some of them don't, but I'm really talking about those almost filing cabinets that they have in certain communities, where you can take what you need or you can leave what you can in terms of food, shelf-stable food. And yeah, there's no application or wait time kind of, like you might see with the food bank, although the food bank is a very good resource as well. And then I know that if people are looking for less shelf-stable sort of goods, there is a community fridge kind of right off of Center Street. So maybe I'll ask the audience a question along those lines, seeing as we're talking about groceries. I'm curious to know who in the audience, or rather our audience members, what have you tried to cut down on your grocery bill? So are you looking at these free food pantries similar to some of my participants, or what are you trying to do here? So I see a comment. We can thank the UCP. Oh, okay. Okay, I see that's more of a political comment, so maybe we'll just leave that one alone for now. Being more careful with not wasting food. Yeah, that's a good one. I think that's just something that we brought up in a blog one time earlier, isn't it, Jody?
Yes, definitely. How we can eliminate food waste, and what kind of things we can do to make use of every bit of our food. I love what Colleen said about meatless meals more often, obviously, because of what we shared at the beginning. But yeah, lots of people are talking about that, right? Trying to use frozen vegetables and recognizing that that is just as valuable as the fresh vegetables, sometimes just with a little bit less of a cost associated with it. I think these are some really great tips. And I do encourage folks to check out our blog to look for that, what people can do around, mitigating their food costs and food wastage for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree, Jody. And yeah, I love also this idea of more meatless meals. I sat in on one of our Saving Circles classes a while ago now. And so one of the topics that the facilitator can sometimes cover is healthy eating on a budget. And quite often the topic that comes up is, is frozen the same as fresh and canned and what have you? And yeah, the nutrition is apparently the same, whether it's frozen or frozen, fresh, or canned. And yeah, beans and legumes are seem to be a really good source of protein that can be a lot cheaper than yeah, meat in some cases. Oh, and I see Colleen has recommended fresh fruits for discounted fresh produce. Yes, I think that is a really great resource as well. So for those of you that don't know, Fresh Roots is kind of like, how would you describe it, Jody? Like a mobile market almost?
Yeah, almost, right? And they visit different communities where folks can access food at a discounted rate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I saw on their website that you can look at their schedule. They have a calendar on there and see which community they'll be in next. I think a couple of weeks ago they were at Sonalta. And then I remember a few years ago when I was visiting one of the Calgary Housing Company buildings, they were actually right in the building. And yeah, the produce is way, way cheaper than you would just see at the store. And everyone's welcome. So yeah, I would really encourage you to Google Fresh Roots and see what their schedule is, see if they'll be in your community.
I also love the other tip there, Liz, about buying sale food and meal planning. And I think that's one that I know I engage with my participants quite a bit around, right? Making that list, making your meal plan, only shopping for what is on your list. And I think because oftentimes we go in and we see this and we want to add this for dinner and this too. And all of a sudden our cart is often more full than we intended. So if you're able to stick to that list and create that meal plan for yourself, I think that's another really good tip for saving money around your grocery bills as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see Sharon also has a tip about don't shop when you're hungry. I agree. Everything looks like I need it when I'm hungry. And I think that goes back to what Jody said about making a good meal plan. So, like you're going in there for bread, eggs, juice, but not this delicious looking cookie item over here. Okay, so we're at 6:50 now. Maybe it would be a good time to move on to high utility costs. I know a lot of people have been interested in that, and I really want to make sure we can ask Wayne some questions while he's here. So just as an opening question for the audience here, how much of a change have you seen in your utility bills lately? Oh, and I'm just going to get to the Q&A, which I missed. I apologize about that. Someone says, I think canned food has a lot of salt. Need to watch for lower salt options, not quite the same nutrition. That's a good point, Wendy. Pardon me. I think that's a good point. That there are potentially some additives in canned food. So yeah, you do need to watch out for that. And someone else has said, we can use one vehicle if possible, rather than using 2 or 3 in the same family. I think that's, yeah, a good direction to take this conversation if we have time afterwards. Certainly we've heard from our participants different ways that they're cutting down on their trip costs. And then related to the groceries, someone told me that they really try to carpool with their neighbor to the grocery store. So perhaps that's a good option as well. And if any of you out there have had luck doing that, we would love to hear how you arrange that. I think being friendly with your neighbors is probably a good start. And yeah, someone is saying lots of higher bills and utilities this past winter. Okay, so let me just check the chat here. Someone says, I'm fortunate I had signed up for Easy Max before utility cap removed, so that has protected me from increased costs. Great, that's good to hear. Yeah, well, it doesn't really seem like a lot of other people have experienced
Well, I have, Liz. I mean, without monopolizing the conversation, I'll tell you that in January or February, I've forgotten now, my utility bill was $300 more than its
wow.
average. And so for my family, right? And yes, we do have 2 people that work and 3 children that live at home and all of these things. And that was a hard pill to swallow. So I think, it comes quite, on the heels of what's happening for other people too. I feel like I cannot be alone, right?
And you're not alone, Jody, because yeah, we saw our utility bill jump by over $100 earlier on in the year too, because I had never seen a bill over $400 before for our place. And then all of a sudden it's in the 500s, and I had to take a second look. But what do you think, Wayne? Are you hearing a lot of that? Is that quite a common comment?
Yeah. So I mean, there's going to be different levels of how much stuff went up depending on different individual homes and those kind of things. And part of the reason why is there's different ways we can purchase our energy. So for example, like the comments in the chat about signing up for Easy Max, and that helped with a little bit of that. One piece to keep in mind is our utility bills are going to be different than our other bills, like our cable bill and our cell phone bill and those kind of things, because you're not agreeing to a set amount per month. You're agreeing to as a rate based on how much you use. So for example, if I signed up with a fixed rate plan, which I'm going to assume is what was mentioned in the chat there, is that's going to set my rate for the month. So it's not going to go up and down by what the market's doing. It's just going to be agreed upon there. So what ends up happening is if we have some different things like cold weather, we tend to just hunker down a bit more. We're in our homes more, and we had that really long cold snap in December and early January. So people spend more time at home. We have to turn our fans up on our heaters or on our furnaces more. All these things kind of drive up the usage. So that's where we'll see a little bit of month-to-month change. But that being said, when we look at the rate options that are out there, so there's 3 basic ways we can do it. There's something called the regulated rate, which is you don't sign a contract. It's the market plan market rate that you would pay, and so it can go up and down pretty substantially. And what we've seen the last probably on the electricity side anyway, the last 2 years, it's been climbing pretty steadily. So when I signed up for my plan, the rates were about a cent lower than they are now, cent and a half lower they are now per kilowatt hour. So if I use 300 kilowatt hours every month, that kind of starts to add up. So, but that being said, if I sign up for something now that's cheaper than what the market rate is, I'm still going to find some savings there. And then the other option would be to look at, you could do a variable plan, much like you would with a mortgage, and it kind of goes the same thing, goes ups and down, but you'd lock in for a number of years. But what we've been seeing is those costs have definitely gone up. The other thing we're seeing in the chat here is mention about all the other costs that are there, and that's kind of how we get the energy to our homes, right? So I can't go to the grocery store, or I can't go to the store and buy a box of electricity like I can go to the grocery store and buy what I need and pick and choose and how much I grab. You kind of need it to be delivered. So, and it's on demand all the time. So that's what we also see those costs. And unfortunately, because Alberta has grown, that infrastructure has been built out more to service our province and service our people who live here. So those have driven the cost up a little bit. So parts of those are going to be based on a daily rate, and parts are going to be based on our usage. So when people say, well, what can I do? Like there was a comment living in an old leaky house or something like that. So there are certain things you can do to kind of make your house a bit more efficient. That will help save some money there. But But also the biggest thing I would say is looking at those plans to make sure you're on the right thing. I always recommend taking a look at it a couple times a year. Usually I'd say like spring and fall, because those are the shoulder seasons. We typically use the most energy in the winter, followed by the summer. So winter we're heating, and we're turning our lights on because it's dark out. Summer we're using it for cooling, so we're using more power then. So I do spring and fall, see what the rates are doing, and make sure I'm on the right plan. And then the other thing I would say is if you ever see the media, the utilities in the news, that's a good time to check too, because if it goes in the news, it's typically because prices are going up. They don't usually do news stories to tell you, congratulations, things are getting cheaper. So we'd all wish they would, but they don't. So those are the kind of big things. And we do have a cost comparison tool that you can use to look at that kind of stuff. So, you know, I recommend people check our website for that as well, and or reach out to our mediation team who can kind of go through those individual cases. If you say, "What this is what my bill is now, I want to shop around, I have a few questions," that'd be the best place to contact as well. So with that, I'll pass it back to you, Liz, because I see a question came in on the credit side as well.
Oh, thanks, Wayne. And just before we continue, I just want to bring to everyone's attention something that was brought to my attention about the Q&A, and that is that it is actually not anonymous. So my apologies about that. I think how we can rectify that is you could type in the chat, and then in to, you can just change that to all panelists. And then we, the panelists, will see that, but not the other attendees. I think that's how that works. So my apologies about that. That was a little blunder on my end. Yeah, and that's interesting what you said, Wayne, that yeah, when you see it in the news, prices are going to go up. So it would be nice if there was an announcement that things are going down all the time, but unfortunately, it doesn't sound like that's the case, is it?
No, it's not, unfortunately. And, you know, utilities are something that we have seen creeping up over time. And it is part of things you can control, part of things you can't control. So one thing you can control is your usage. So being aware of things, turning things off. If you have the means or have access to organizations that can help out with some efficiency, things like that. So that could be things like anything from something as simple as changing your furnace filter to you know, just making sure you don't have any gaps in along your windows and doors in the winter, so you're not having a draft, those kind of things, turning electronics off, all that kind of stuff, even though it might seem like it doesn't make a big difference, because that part of your bill that says usage seems like it's a small part, but a lot of those delivery charges also are based on usage. So you want to kind of you'll see that trickle in and out of your bill. And Alberta does it a little different than anywhere else. So if you were in BC or Saskatchewan, they'd build it all into one rate. Here we don't, so it's a little bit more confusing, but just know that, you know, that's a big part of it. And in terms of the other fees, they do exist for a reason. A lot of them are regulated by the Alberta Utility Commission, so that's something to watch for as well. So, and then somebody else had a comment of maybe utility is in the rent, so we may not see that impact. So that's something else I always talk about when I'm doing presentations or chatting with people, is knowing what you're responsible for in your home. So for example, if you live in an apartment, your owner is responsible for electricity, you're going to watch for that. But say you're moving and your new place is going to have you be responsible for all the utilities, that's another thing to watch for, to put in your budget. So if your place says it's all included and your rent is say $1,500, and you look at a place that rent is $1,200, but you're responsible for your utilities, you might actually be paying more in that case, because you don't know what that utility structure is. So you want to do that comparison. That's why is helpful for that as well, to give you a rough idea of you know what that's going to cost. And just know that it does change month to month based on our usage. So our most expensive months are typically going to fall in from about November till March, so the coldest weather, and then a bit of a spike up in like July and August, but not nearly as high. So something else people can look at as well is asking their provider for what's called an equalized payment plan, where they'll level it out so every month is the same, and then 1 month a year they'll do a correction, so it might be a little bit higher, a little bit lower. I mean, we can probably all guess it'll be probably a little bit higher because they tend to estimate that way, but at least that way you don't get that big surprise after Christmas and the holiday season where you open your bill and you go, where am I going to find $300 more than I paid last month? You know, so that's something that you can also ask for. They don't really advertise it, but you can always ask for the equalized payment plan. so you can level it out that way.
That's a good tip, Wayne. I didn't even know about that. Did you know about that one, Jody?
I did from years ago. I can remember, yeah, that was a tip for folks.
Yeah. So when, you know, probably in cases when you haven't thought to put that in your budget yet, but, you know, budgeting could be, like Wayne mentioned, another way to go about doing that. And of course, you know, I'm a big fan of putting together emergency savings for times when expenses go up unexpectedly. But, you know, really building those savings is part of the whole budget thing too, I suppose. Oh, Wayne, before I go into the chat comments, I just wanted to ask you, did you mention that your other colleague from UCA had done another chat about the high utilities along with Empower Me on CTV?
It was on CBC. So actually, it was
CBC.
Our executive director did it. I think it was last Wednesday, it was the Wednesday before. And so he was on there chatting with and taking kind of Q&A questions similar to this. It was with Empower Me, who do a lot of efficiency programs. They do operate in Calgary as well. So they look at how they can help out with you know, making your home a bit more efficient, whether that be doing an analysis of your house or actually some of the products. So they're great to look at. And then Rise Calgary was a part of that, as well as a group that has that they're made up of Sunrise Community Link, Southeast Community Resource Center, and Bow West joined forces. And they do a basic needs fund to help people who might fall into arrears with utilities and other basic needs as well. So it was a great panel that that I can share the link for with you, Liz, to share out as well.
Sure.
And people had, I mean, the themes have been very similar, but it's nice to get somebody who can chat about it, and it was really well done.
That's great. Yeah, thanks, Wayne. So just to recap, that was a panel that was done through CBC, my mistake. Thanks for correcting me, Wayne. So if people are interested in hearing about that more in depth, I suggest you search for that online. And I did watch the recording the other day. And then person who had the question about, or the comment rather, about living in the leaky house and plastic on the windows, perhaps Empower Me is a organization that you may want to look into as well, because of their efficiency advice that they can give you. Okay, so let's just go into the comments now. I signed up for Easy Max 2, but my bill went up $15 or $20. Yeah. Maybe utilities in the rent, so that rent increase, folks don't see the increase. Okay, I see. Wayne, you addressed that. Thank you. Energy bill scares me a lot. It can be scary, yeah. So it's good to prepare, as we've just been saying, with either emergency savings or budgeting, or the equalization perhaps may help.
But wondering if I could add a question to that, you know, because I get a lot of people that say those exact words to me, that they're afraid of their energy bill, that they don't know what to do. They're afraid they're going to get cut off. And I'm just wondering, Wayne, can you answer or speak to that? Like, can your energy just be cut off in the middle of winter? Because I know that's a large fear that I know we're going into summer now, but just for next year's, you know, understanding.
Good question.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's something that is top of mind for a lot of people who've been, you know, in that high stress around their utility bills this year as well. So the short answer about being disconnected from your utilities in the middle of winter is no. So there is a program the Alberta Utility Commission runs, and we help out. We actually we call everybody who's on a disconnection list that we get from the utility companies themselves. And so basically from the middle of October until the middle of April, people cannot be disconnected because it's a safety issue. So that doesn't mean you don't still get a utility bill. It means that you have to come up with a repayment plan with the utility company to get yourself back into good standing before that, at the end of that program, which falls typically April 15th, weather dependent, because if we have weather that's under freezing, it doesn't move forward until after we get past that time of year. So So at that point, if somebody is still in arrears and is still behind on their payments, they can be given a disconnection notice and have their utilities disconnected at that time. And so that's where we'd say, I always tell people, be as proactive as you can in these situations by talking to your utility company, asking how you can set up payments, tell them what you can afford. And if it gets to a point where, there is some assistance needed, that's where I'd always say, reach out to the organizations that do basic needs funds, like, Alberta Works does some work there. That's through the government of Alberta. You got 211 Distress Center, Rise Calgary, Trellis, and a few others that are out there that help out in these kind of situations. But the other thing can happen in the winter is it may not be a full disconnection, but what they will do is potentially put on what's called a limiter. And so that means people's electricity gets limited down to a low level where they basically have enough power to run like their furnace, one burner on their stove, a couple of lights, those kind of things. And if you go over that, it can trip off for, say, 15 minutes, or you have to go reset it yourself, and those kind of things, depending on the meter that people have. So it's something that does exist to help people basically be safe through the winter. We don't want people freezing in their homes, right? So, but that being said, as we get into the springtime, then the companies can potentially disconnect. And they often will send a notice first, and they've also this year been pretty lenient just because of the world that we're in right now. So that's something to watch for as well. And again, just having that proactive conversation as best we can with the utility company, and then reaching out to those other resources that are there. I had something else in mind, but it skipped my mind just now. So if it comes back, I'll bring it back in as to tag onto it, but I don't want to keep rambling till I remember what it is.
No worries, Wayne. I think that's a lot of great information that you've been able to share with people today. And yeah, so that is really great to know, because a lot of my participants, I know in the middle of winter and when it's really cold, worry about that quite often too. And then, as you mentioned, there's a basic needs fund through organizations such as Rise Calgary. So that is good to know is out there as well. Let's just return to the chat here. People are saying.
For the last piece of that, Liz.
Oh, great. Yeah, please.
So the other thing that can happen, I mentioned, I think I mentioned this to you and Jody in a previous meeting, is where it can get a little confusing is, say you sign up with a retailer where you put all your utilities under one bill, or you're locked into, say, a fixed rate or something like that, but the person had fallen behind in that situation. So what can happen is they might not get a disconnection notice from that retailer, but they can be dropped by them, because that retailer can say, we're not collecting our money, this person is in arrears, we'll just drop them as a client. Now, they're not disconnected. What ends up happening is they get shifted over to what's called the regulated rate provider. So that would be the market rate you pay all the time. It's month to month, there's no contract, but you always would then have default service. But then people get confused because they get a bill that says, Direct Energy Regulated Services, or NMAX Power, instead of Easy Max, or instead of one of these other companies that they signed up with. And they can say, I never signed up with this, I don't want to pay this because I don't know what this is. And what's happened in that situation is, because somebody might have fallen behind on the company they had signed up with, that was called a competitive retailer. So you choose your rate type, those kind of things. If they fall into arrears, they can be dropped down to that default provider. And it may not have been communicated as clearly as maybe they would, as it would benefit the consumer. So then they can be a bit confused. So in that case, if they fall behind on that default provider, then they can get disconnected. So you always want to watch your bills to make, if somebody falls behind, we want them to watch their bills, be as proactive as possible, and also know if you get something from a different utility company like that, chances are that's what happened. And if they have any questions whatsoever on that, or on disconnections, or on those kind of concerns, and they want to talk to somebody unbiased, they can always call us, because we're a government agency. We're not connected to any retailer. We're not going to try and sell them anything. We're just going to say, here's what's happening, here's what your options are, and we can help them move forward.
That's excellent advice, Wayne. Thank you. So I think that's a good lesson for everyone out there, that, check your mail, read it thoroughly, make sure you understand. It sounds like Wayne and the team at Utilities Consumer Advocate is there to help if you're not sure if this is legitimate or not. They can help you determine that. Okay, so we're getting pretty low on time. I just quickly want to return to a question that someone had in the chat, which is, what can you do if you have so many credit cards and lines of credit to pay and you're a single person with kids? Any advice? And unfortunately, yeah, we are running out of time, and we promised that we wouldn't really delve into individual cases. But I will say that Momentum has a free financial coaching program. It's free if you are living on a low income. So please check us out on momentum.org, and you can book directly with a financial coach from there to talk about your specific situation, and they can help you come up with a debt management plan, which may help you out with your specific situation.
I think too, Liz, if that's okay, I think a really big recommendation would be to check out the on-demand money management classes, because there's 5 of them, like you mentioned at the very beginning, and one of them happens to be about credit. And so that course will help you learn about credit and the assistance that you can get around your credit and paying off your credit, whether you're managing it on your own or getting some outside help. I see someone mention Money Mentors. So the on-demand credit class, which runs just like it sounds, on demand, you can get in there and take that class anytime you want, whether it's first thing in the morning with your coffee or at the end of the day with a nice glass of tea, whatever it is that you prefer. They are about 45 minutes to an hour long. And of course, I think you mentioned this as well, that, all of our programming is free. So it's a really great resource to just get on and learn a little bit more about topics such as credit or budgeting or even banking if you're interested.
That's perfect segue. Thank you so much for mentioning that, Jody. And where can they go to sign up for that course again?
You bet. So the website is straight on your screen there. It's courses.momentum.org. And if you're struggling at all and you can't figure it out, feel free to send me an email or even give us a call at our main switchboard, and someone can help you figure that out for sure.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jody. Yeah, and I see people are mentioning consumer proposal, perhaps, or maybe contacting like a licensed insolvency trustee, but you really need to explore the different options available to you before you make a decision. And as Jody mentioned, the credit course can kind of show you the different options as well. If you wanted to speak with a financial coach, they could walk you through what's available, because it is really so situation specific, isn't it, Jody?
Yes, absolutely it is. Yeah.
And I see Theodora is mentioning, yeah, so if you identify as Indigenous, you're in the Indigenous community, there's a great new program through Momentum called Money Moccasins, which, where the facilitator is, the facilitator identifies as Indigenous as well, and they really try to incorporate those themes into the workshops. And Shakila, I'm sorry that no one has ever answered the phone, but please give me a call tomorrow. I'm around all day tomorrow, so definitely give me a call, 403-204-2668, because I want to hear more about what we can help you with. But it seems like we're just right at the end of our session today. Yeah, that was really very short. So maybe just to wrap up, Wayne and Jody, do you have one tip that you'd like to leave our audience with today?
Sure. Yeah, I do think that knowledge is power. And I think the biggest tip that I can give to folks is learn about your finances. We tend to stick our head in the sand when things are scary, when we feel anxious or stressed, we ignore them. Wayne has said a couple of times today, talk to your providers, work out the deals with them. And I really do feel that, knowledge is power, and understanding our bills and our finances can really alleviate a lot of stress. And like I've kind of already said it once before, but those on-demand courses, they really can be a great touch for folks to start learning about financial literacy and starting that conversation.
Well said, Jody. Knowledge is power. Absolutely. What do you think, Wayne?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think those are all very, very important things to keep front of mind in these situations. The other thing I would say is don't be shy to check other resources that are out there. So if you're a little bit gun shy maybe about contacting the utility company or a bank or whoever it is because if you're behind or those kind of things, reach out to an organization that works in the not-for-profit space or in the government space who can give you that advice on how to approach that conversation. An example we would have is if somebody calls and they're not sure what they're behind the bill, they don't know how to have that conversation with the utility company, they can call us and we can kind of walk them through what that's going to be like, and then they can make that phone call without maybe feeling so scared or it being so intimidating. So I'd say know those things are out there, and I said it a few times, but being as proactive as possible. I know it's hard to do sometimes, but it's the more you know, the better off you are with this kind of stuff, because the longer you wait, the fewer options you have, unfortunately, when it comes to finding in arrears in anything. So use your resources. Stuff like this session are wonderful. I've worked Momentum at different times over the years. Lots of great education out there too. So when in doubt, try and learn.
Yeah, wonderful, Wayne. And it's so great to know that community resources like the Utilities Consumer Advocate exist out there to offer their support for people during these times. And something that you said that really struck a chord with me was be proactive. So we didn't really get into this today, but with the Momentum Savings Challenge, we're really encouraging all Calgarians living on low incomes to build an emergency savings fund. I know it can seem hard right now, but like we were saying to Livewire, we did an interview with Livewire the other day, and if it's not going to be high prices, then perhaps the pandemic stops people from saving, or the state of the oil and gas industry stops people from saving. There's always going to be a reason that people turn to for why they can't start an emergency fund. And I will tell you, I had a phone call with a participant today who told me that, he just keeps an empty, like a clean milk jar by the door. And when he gets home, he just puts his spare change in it. And that's, all you really need to get an emergency fund going. It doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be a hefty amount right away. My one piece of advice would be just start now. Start small, start now, try to be consistent, and it can make things a little bit easier to weather when unexpected expenses crop up. So unfortunately, we are out of time. I apologize because 45 minutes probably was not enough time, but if you found this session to be useful, if you would appreciate more regular gatherings of the community members who are facing similar situations, and these talks, if you find these useful, please do drop me a line, lizw@momentum.org, and perhaps we can work with our other not-for-profit partners in future, like Wayne, thank you again, Wayne, to offer these sessions in future on a more regular basis. So unfortunately, we are all out of time. Thank you again so much to everyone who attended tonight. Thank you very, very much, Jody and Wayne. I really appreciated everyone sharing today and really appreciated everyone's time.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. Everyone have a wonderful night and do take care. Bye-bye now.